Now that I pulled all that tape off, which actually takes a little while, there's going to be a lot of excess adhesive left on because the tape mixes with the super glue and there's just no way to get it off with your finger. Same on the back and on the edges. And besides, this actually sticks out a little bit. It's a little bit proud of the side and along the edges, so we need to sand it. So we're going to do the edges first, and to keep it from getting scratched at all in the vise, I just kind of grab some thin melamine and put it on the side and gently clamp it into place. Remember, it's not really thick wood, so don't over tighten. We don't want to hurt it. So grab a sander with fine sandpaper. Take fine. I would not recommend using rough. It's way too easy to sand too much off. And I've actually sanded off the whole edge without thinking. If I'm sanding and I tilt too much, it's going to be that way. So to help, grab a pencil and you're going to draw a line just below this edging on both sides, here and here. And I would do it all the way around everywhere. The idea is that when the pencil line disappears, because it's just below the area that's sticking out, then you know it's flat, it's flush. I don't need to sand anymore. So as soon as this is flat with this line should disappear. And I only really need to do it on the edges. The faces I'm not as worried about. So put it back in the vise and let's start sanding. Take your time, roll it around. Remember, to get inside the inside here, you got to be careful because all it will sand on is on the edge. So you're just sanding on the edge. However, by doing that, you're sanding in one spot a lot more than the whole area of the disc. So you got to be careful. By sanding like this, you got to be very gentle how you go. So let's put it in fast forward and see how this goes. After I've sanded all this with fine paper and everything is smooth, I highly recommend blowing it off. A lot of this black plastic is going to be all over. It's going to look weird. So just blow it off with some air. Take some 220 sandpaper and just lightly take off the sharp edges you've just made with all the sanding. All that sanding basically is like sharpening a knife, and we don't want these edges to feel sharp at all. There we go. Enough to be square, or at least to look square, but not uncomfortable in the hand. Flip it over and go ahead and do it again, all over. This plastic just sands almost like wood with some fine grit, so that'll take off, make it a little nicer to feel. All right, good. Now, with the neck finished, we need to drill the mating holes that these dowels will go into, so we're gonna do that now. Here's my jig that I used before. Neck here is what we used last time, and that one against the neck. This time, body here. So we're going to push that against our body. And there's a line in the center. You want to line that up directly with the center line, which only I can see because I'm right on it. The camera can't really see it. Right there. Keep it nice and tight. And then clamp that on gently. You don't want a ton of pressure. Okay. So I shouldn't see any gaps here and here, so that's fine. Now we're just going to take our drill bit, and I want to loosen it and pull it way out. The goal here is we're going to drill through that piece of wood that's at both ends all the way through. So anytime I glue it, it has a place to escape, so there won't be any gap when I put the neck in. So simply just drill both sides. And then take it off of there. We should be all set. Hopefully you got it darn close to where they match up. If you're a hair off, that's okay, but as close as possible, those holes should be. So now you should dry fit, and this might get a bit on the tight side because these dowels, I had to hammer them in. They don't just slip in by hand. So attempt to see if they'll go in there. And it's going in, but it is really tight. Okay, and you can see, now the gap is still there, of course. It's not quite all the way down, but mostly I want to look here. Is there a gap where this meets the fretboard? And I don't see one. That's a good thing. That's nice and tight. Now, if you're trying to put it in and it just seems way too tight, it doesn't seem to want to go in, we can sand the dowels a little bit, and I might do that. It's awfully tight because I need to be able to get it all the way in. Clamps, it's not a good area to clamp on here. Now, if you do see gaps under here, if this is tilted a little bit too far when you put it in, or it doesn't line up quite right, we'll simply take a razor blade or a file or something and start sanding down your dowels until it does slip into place. We're basically just making them smaller so I can push it and force it into the right area. If it's a little bit too tall, then we'll sand some of the top, the bottom of the dowel so I can slip it down. That gives me space to go downward, and vice versa. If it doesn't slip in because it's too tight, we got to take a little bit of the top off so I can slip it up. So there's a lot of variation that we can do, but either way, the dowels are probably the best way to hold this on. So once you get it in, check and see. Is there anywhere that I need to cut with a razor blade? I need to file it off and so forth, but be careful not to hit this nice sharp edge. I want that to be flat against as we glue it on. When you think you're ready, I found that the best way to put this in, and it varies, it's kind of to go up and down. Up and down as much as you can. A little side to side, but mostly up and down. Now we look, and it's flush there, or it's tight, I should say. I can push it tight there, it's tight here. That's what I'm looking for. I need it to be tight in all three areas, all the way around, and tight here on top. So if that fits, now we can go ahead and pull that back off again. We're going to put some glue in the dowels. We're going to glue the faces here and here, slip it in, and have a wet paper towel handy because anything that's extra on the sides, we want to make sure to wipe that away as quick as we can. All right, here we go. So a little bit of glue on all the surfaces again. Now please remember, when I have this on, the end of this will stick over into the sound hole. So I don't mind if you glue it, but it won't actually be glued onto anything. Rub it all around. Every surface again. I'm kind of leaving the end open. That's fine. It doesn't really need glue. And of course, a little glue on all the dowels. There we go. Just kind of wipe it off your finger. I don't want to touch this nicely sanded wood with glue. It's the last thing I want right now. Get that water off. And then push it back in. Best you can. Get that as tight as you can. Okay. My main goal is I want the neck tight with the bodies. I'm gonna move that out of the way. Take a bigger clamp and see if we can't get it on there to give it some pressure. It's difficult because there's nothing really flat here to clamp against. So I can give it a little pressure, but it won't take a ton. All right, I'm gonna just try to make sure that's as tight as we can get it. So I'm looking right here, there's a little bit of a gap, okay? So I take this small clamp, put it inside the sound hole. I'm gonna move it into place and hold it there. There we go. Let's look at the other side. That's all right. That's nice and tight. I put one more clamp on here with gentle pressure there. Can't we just let that sit? Gotta let that sit again for the same half hour as always. Once that's done, then we can start make sure to final sand everything. But for the moment, I'm gonna look for any glue on the sides that may need to, yep, there's some right there. If there's any in a sharp area, you can use a scratch-all, something with a sharp tip, and just kind of go right in over the wet paper towel and get it out. Now is the time to do it. It's much easier with it wet than when it dries up. If there's any on the sides here, now's the time to get that as well.